Hi! Now that I'm in a more stable place, I got accepted for my apartment and I've just started moving in. I wanted to make a video talking about how I got where I am. So it actually started in 2018. My husband and I took our honeymoon trip to Hawaii and we fell in love with the islands. After a second trip, we were certain that we wanted to move there, especially because of the weather and the universal health care. I have a couple chronic conditions that I could really use the healthcare for. That's really was just big for us. And severe seasonal depression. So we were really excited about moving somewhere that had regular sunny weather. We set our moving date to September 2020. And in 2019, we were doing everything we could to move there, but the more we researched and planned our move, the more we realized it would be wrong for us to move to Hawaii. And some people might not agree with us. Oh my goodness. Some people might not agree with us, but we realized we'd need a cheap apartment or even low-income housing to make it in Hawaii. And taking cheap housing away from Native Hawaiians, especially when we didn't have much we could give back to the islands yet, was wrong. When COVID hit, it really decimated Hawaii's economy. Most of Hawaii's economy is based on tourism, and when COVID started getting bad, tourism stopped. So that really sealed the deal for us that we would not be able to move in 2020. We might consider moving to Hawaii once we both have our degrees, because then we'll be making enough money that we won't need to take low-income housing from any Native Hawaiians, and we will be able to have the means to give back to the islands. Now, our decision to move to California was a little bit out of the blue. We had visited LA once in 2019, and we felt like it was too fast-paced for us. We talked a lot about how we could never live there. We decided on a bit of a whim to visit the city about 30 minutes away from LA in July of 2020. It was a very cautious trip because of COVID, but our short time there, we decided that moving there would be much easier than moving to Hawaii, and maybe the fast-paced lifestyle would really light a fire under us to help us accomplish our dreams. I want to be a school teacher, but I've been very unmotivated to complete my schooling. My husband wants to be a neuroscientist, but for the past year, he's been experiencing immense burnout. Where we moved from, it was cloudy almost 300 days a year. So we're hoping that the sun in Los Angeles will help my seasonal depression, and being surrounded by successful and, I'll be honest, superficial people will motivate my husband to keep working towards his high-paying degree. We liked the opportunities LA had to offer, and the fact that our friends and family were a much shorter plane ride away. And by the end of our short 4-day trip, we were sold on moving to Los Angeles. In August, I had an online interview for a job. Oh my God, I keep dropping my phone. In August, I had an online interview for a job. At the end of August, we took another trip to Los Angeles so that I could secure my job position, and we could look for an apartment. We returned to Northern Oregon after the trip to start packing. We'd officially be moving in 2 weeks. My best friend lived with her husband and baby at her husband's dad's apartment. Their lease at the last place they were living at ended, and due to some unfortunate circumstances, they couldn't renew it. So they were currently homeless, living on the living room floor of her husband's dad's place. We had offered to help them move. My husband and we'd offered to help them move to LA if they were interested in being our roommates and getting a fresh start with us. We both felt like they really needed a fresh start, even more than we did. She declined because she was going through some relationship issues and was pretty certain she'd be getting an apartment in Oregon soon. The day after my husband and I got back from our August trip to Los Angeles, my best friend asked me to hang out. When I saw her, she explained that she was denied the apartment she'd applied for and that her relationship couldn't handle the stress of continuing to be homeless for an indefinite amount of time. She asked if my offer to let her and her husband and their baby come with us was still on the table. My husband and I hadn't been approved for an apartment yet. So, and the thought of having them come with us was just, it was exciting. We were ecstatic to be able to have some familiar faces with us, and splitting the rent for a 2-bedroom apartment was significantly cheaper than us getting a 1-bedroom or even a studio on our own. So, even though the initial move would be much more expensive, we'd cover the cost to get them to come with us. And, you know, in 2 weeks, we all packed up our things and headed to LA. We spent an extra $100 on a larger moving truck, about $100 to have them apply with us for an apartment because it was about $50 more per adult on the application, $100 on a larger storage unit, and $200 for larger, more accommodating motel rooms. But that was okay because within a few months their help with the rent would be more than enough to pay back the extra $500 we spent. You know, and with all the way our situations had just lined up, this felt like it was perfect, like it was meant to be. So, as I said, we packed our things and we started our move. We drove for about 8 hours one day, stayed in a motel, then completed our drive to LA the next day. We were in a motel in LA because we hadn't gotten a place yet. On the third night, my friend's husband had a breakdown. He was yelling and stomping around, pounding on the door, saying that he was going to go back to Oregon and he was going to take their son with him whether or not my friend came. So, you know, I'm not really sure what started this because hours before, he was helping us move all of our things from the U-Haul into the storage unit, and he seemed happy and excited to be here with us. I still don't understand it. But, I don't know, something that night just changed, and my friend had to decide between staying in California or going with her husband back to Oregon. And, of course, she chose to stick with her husband, the father of her child. And that whole string of events was so confusing. It's still so confusing. My friend had a job lined up in California already, and we were going to continue paying for the apartment fees as we applied for places and the motel stays until we found a place. I mean, even though she was still homeless, at least she was homeless with people who respected her and her husband and were willing to accommodate things like quiet time when their baby was asleep. Unlike in Oregon, in their living situation, the family members would be loud while their baby was sleeping. They wouldn't mind doing things like dishes or stomping around. Like, they didn't have much respect for them at all. And unlike in Oregon, they were sleeping in a bed instead of on the floor. But my friend's husband just could not work through his homesickness and decided they were going back to Oregon. Not even 4 days after they left, my husband and I got approved for an apartment. And so it's September 3rd right now while I'm filming this, and as of now, they are still homeless. So, I don't know, the whole thing kind of just feels like a tragedy to me. I can't make sense of it. I really can't. And when they left, they couldn't afford to get themselves a U-Haul, so they packed what they could into their car, but they left the majority of their things in the storage unit my husband and I paid for. And we paid for it through September and now October because we haven't moved our own things out of it yet. But we planned on getting rid of the storage unit once we had all gotten an apartment together, and I don't think we can really afford the $300 a month that it's going to cost for us to store their things. Oh, jeez. I'll be sorry, my camera literally just died, so if this ends up being a part 2, I am sorry. But as I was saying, I don't think we can really afford the $300 a month it's going to cost us to store their things, and I don't feel like we should be having to pay $300 a month to store stuff that isn't ours. And I mean, I'd be talking to my friend about this shortly because I want to give her a heads up that end of October we don't want to be paying for this unit anymore. But I mean, I'm nervous about it. I don't even know why. I guess I just hate confrontation, but I know I shouldn't be paying to store their things. So that's just that. I mean, I'm just really not looking forward to that conversation, I guess. So, I guess to really quickly sum this all up, my husband and I plan to move to Hawaii for over 2 years. I lost my notes. I just dropped my notes. I promise that this is all like real and whatever, but I can't keep my thoughts together, so I had to write it all down. Anyways, like I said, we planned on moving to Hawaii for over 2 years. And then on a whim, we visited LA. And within 3 months, we moved there instead. And now, that's where we are. Thanks for listening, and, I'll do a tour of my apartment soon. I just would like to get everything unpacked first. Right now, it looks like a wreck. I'll show some before pictures in the next video, too, but I don't really think there's anything super tour-worthy yet, so talk to you soon.